Hello everyone, welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I am broadcasting to you from Hungary, capital city Budapest, Central Europe. Today we are continuing with our online course, taking it from our websites. Again, if you're studying academic IELTS, please definitely visit us at aehelp.com. I'll put it up here as well. That's academicenglishhelp.com. And that's designed specifically for academic IELTS with lots of materials, practice exams, interactive course, video lessons, and much, much more. If you're studying for general IELTS, please visit us at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. Of course, as I mentioned in Wednesday's class, introducing IELTS and the key concepts, the writing and the reading parts of general and academic are different. Hi, everyone joining in. Hi, Shiji. Thank you for wishing me a good evening. Hi, Jeffrey. Hello, Edward. Hi, VJ. Hi, Anita. Hi, Amarwadi. Good to see you in class. So this week, we started learning from our online course. Our online course are found on our websites, as I just mentioned. This is what they look like. So when you're online on your computer at home, if you look for us, aehelp.com, you should see this page. And you can create a demo user or full user, log in at the top. And then when you log in, which I can't because I have no internet apparently on this computer. Let's see if I can bring it back. Anyway, I'll show you general IELTS. Meanwhile, if you're studying for general IELTS, then it's this green background here. Again, if you're studying for academic, it's the blue background. And when you log in, then you will see your My Student account. And in your My Student account, I know it's quite bright, so I'll darken it up just to show you this really quickly. You will get a tour of what we have, and then you will have all of these different sections. And the first one here are 6 fully interactive tests. So this is a full course that you're looking at. And if I zoom in, you'll see that these are actually interactive exams that you can use on your phone or your tablet and so on. Hi, Shakya. But the reason I came to the website is because I want you to know exactly where I'm getting the material from that I'm using for today's class. So the second tab here is the full course. When you click on that, and then you click on any one of these sections of the course, then you will be able to access these materials. Now you can access some of these in the free version, and then you can also access, of course, all of the materials in the full version. So that's where you will find these. And these are responsive web pages, so you can use them again on your phone or wherever else. So this might look familiar. This is what you saw in Wednesday's class, so 2 days ago, of course. And then you can go through the course. It explains everything step by step. This course is designed for your computer, your tablet, or phone. I have something a little bit different for you for these live classes. Basically, it's just a darker background. So we'll continue where we left off on Wednesday, which is this slide here. All right, on Wednesday, yes, Harky, there is a free version of the course. The live streams are absolutely free, and you can get a full version of the course that's paid, okay? On Wednesday, hopefully there's some students joining in today from Wednesday, I introduced IELTS, and I introduced 3 key strategies for IELTS. Anybody remember what the 3 big strategies are that you want to study for effective learning? And a good place to start that is with IELTS, and then of course mastering it through learning with IELTS. Use it in college and university as well. So Mr. Random, the classes are online. All right, So what are these three big strategies? Ahmed Bashir, very good. Paraphrasing is definitely one of them, and we'll get into that one today. Shilpa, thanks for listing all three. Yep, critical thinking, paraphrasing, visualization, and we started off by talking about critical thinking. Now, when I was teaching critical thinking, remember I showed you a technique of how to understand words as well. Imagination, Ahmed, is just a part of visualization. It's not quite the whole picture. All right, so let's talk a little bit about critical thinking. I have to go back here a little bit. Just give me a moment. So we haven't covered this slide yet. Just a second. All right. So here we go. Okay, so this is where we left off on Wednesday. We talked about the what, we talked about the why, and we are now talking about the how. So how can we do critical thinking? How can we analyze information, okay? And the first step is you have to try to look at the full picture, okay? A good way to think about information, so when you're looking at the IELTS reading, for instance, or if you're looking at IELTS writing task 2, is try to understand the whole information, okay? Don't worry about the pieces. A good way to think about it is like a puzzle. A lot of you are probably familiar with puzzle games where you have to put together a picture from many little pieces. Now, of course, when you put together a puzzle, the easy way to do it is look at the picture first and then look at the little pieces and try to put them together. So that's how you have to think about information. And in detail, you have to ask these three really important questions of what, why, how for all different kinds of questions and passages and listening in the IELTS, okay? And then, of course, there are other questions like who, where, when, okay? And in the reading and in the writing sections, this is especially important. Roshan, we're going to be looking specifically at using critical thinking and paraphrasing for the IELTS, okay? So I'm going to give you an example of critical thinking using just a paragraph from a reading passage, okay? So for those of you that have our course and our books, this is coming out of the curriculum test. It's reading passage number 2 and it's paragraph F, okay? So here we want to apply that critical thinking, and some of you who are students for a while now with us, you have been doing this in practice for a lot of the reading passages that I've taught you in the past. So now I'm just breaking it down for you. So let's read this together. Read with me nice and loud, okay? So paragraph F. Plate tectonics are not only responsible for mountains and the movement of the continents, they are also responsible for volcanoes. Volcanoes usually result from one of two plate configurations. They form in places where the plates are colliding or where the plates are pulling apart. In the first case, the plates come together, pushing against each other, causing friction and heat, which allows some of the crust material to melt, resulting in liquid magma. Because magma is less dense than the surrounding rock, it ends up rising to the surface, where it becomes a volcano. An example of this type of volcano is the famous Mount Vesuvius, which destroyed the city of Pompeii in 79 CE. The second type of volcano comes from divergent plates. These types tend to be underwater, as in the mid-oceanic ridges. Volcanic islands such as Iceland and Hawaii were formed by underwater volcanic activity, eventually spewing off enough matter to form land above water, okay? So when you read this paragraph, you want to understand the whole picture first, okay? So the big idea, and then worry about the little pieces. So hopefully here you understood what the big picture is. Anybody, what's the big picture? So what is the main point or the main idea of this paragraph? What do you think? Lots of students viewing. If you're not sure, just take a guess. I'll let you know if you're on the right path. So here we're applying critical thinking. We're trying to understand the main idea of the paragraph in a simple few-word answer. What is it about? Mr. Shakya, it's not bad. It's about volcanoes. So something about volcanoes, sure. A little bit more specific. Michael John, types of volcanoes, sure. VJ, that's a little bit better. You're saying it's 2 types of volcanoes, okay? Sure. The way volcanoes are formed, that's the best answer, Jeffrey. So, the way volcanoes are formed, that's the big picture. And then you can start looking at the smaller pieces, right? So why are volcanoes formed? There are 2 different reasons. One, when plates of the continental plates, when they hit together or when they pull apart. So there's 2 reasons for forming them. How? Well, there's melting of rock, and the molten rock is less dense, so it rises up to the surface, right? That's the very simple how. And then we can get into whens and wheres. So where is an example of a volcano formation? Anybody? Where? Where can we see volcanoes forming? So this is where you can get into the details, the specifics, the smaller pieces of the puzzle. And when you're at home studying for IELTS, this is what you want to do, ladies and gentlemen. You want to focus in on a paragraph like this and pull it apart. Get the big idea and get all the little pieces. I often find that students are going through IELTS materials too quickly. Zaman, very good. Iceland and Hawaii. So Iceland and Hawaii are 2 places where we can see the formation of volcanoes, right? Which type is that? It's the type where the crust is pulling apart. So when the crust is pulling apart and magma is allowed to come through the cracks to the surface, eventually forming islands like Hawaii and Iceland. So that's that type of volcano, the second type. Okay. Nobody answered Mount Vesuvius. Mount Vesuvius in Italy, of course. That's another type of volcano. That's where something smashes together. Not like Jurassic World, Roman. That's a little bit fictitious, but yes, there is a volcano in the movie as well. All right. So here you ask these 3 questions, a little bit of a review. So what is the paragraph about? Plate tectonics are responsible for volcanoes, okay? So that green's a little bit hard for you to see, but basically the answer here that it's saying is that plate tectonics are responsible for volcanoes. Okay, so that's the main idea of this. Plate tectonics are responsible for volcanoes. How? In 2 ways, right? So the next question is, why are plate tectonics responsible for the formation of volcanoes? Okay, you can see it clearly now. And knowing the right questions is just as important, if not more important, than knowing the right answers, okay? So you want to get this. If you didn't get this answer that plate tectonics are responsible for volcanoes, then you want to practice until you can get the answers that accurate, okay? So they form in places where the plates are colliding. Colliding means crashing together, or where they are pulling apart, okay? So that's the answer for the why question. And then how does the author show this explanation? Well, they give the examples of Mount Vesuvius, the Hawaiian Islands, and then, of course, Iceland as well. All right? So this is analyzing your reading. Now, the opposite of reading, yeah, Arcan, I know it's green. I've changed the future ones to yellow, so it'll be more clear. But I'll put it up here, okay? So They form in places where plates crash or pull apart. Okay? And the examples were Mount Vesuvius and the Hawaiian Islands. That's the how. Okay? All right, so you need to do this what, why, how in the reading. Where else do you need to do it? So students who watch these classes frequently, where else do you need to really carefully apply this what, why, how thinking? Okay? Yeah, Amar, thanks for that heads up too. It's a little bit experimental, but the colors, I've changed the green to yellow for the future slides, so you will see them better, okay? So where else do you really need to apply the what, why, how outside of reading? Shanu, that's right, in writing. Why? Because your paragraphs, your body paragraphs in your writing task 2, especially, should follow the same pattern, okay? Now, if you're doing our course online, when you get to this slide and this stage, you definitely want to practice this with a couple of different paragraphs, all right? So let's move on to the third section of our course. Here we go. So that kind of concludes the concept, the main idea of critical thinking, okay? Now we're going to go a little bit into paraphrasing. So paraphrasing being a very, very important skill, if not the most important skill in IELTS. It's really hard to say if paraphrasing is more important than critical thinking. I think both are just as important. You really need to master both of them, okay? So we're actually going to use critical thinking to understand paraphrasing. It makes sense. Once you know critical thinking, use it everywhere all the time. So I'm going to explain paraphrasing. We've already talked about what it is. Everybody remembers what paraphrasing is? Harky, we'll get into those specific questions when we get into the reading section of the exams. Definitely you want to apply critical thinking to true, false, not given as well. And you'll see how, okay? All right, anybody know what paraphrasing is or remember it from Wednesday's class? What does that mean? What does paraphrasing actually mean? Shuck, yeah, that's a bit of an awkward explanation, changing the sentence by changing the words. You're not actually changing the sentence or the meaning of the sentence, but you're rephrasing the sentence. So you're expressing the same idea using different words, okay? So, Shanu, you're trying to say give the same meaning using other words. And it can be a question or it can be a statement as well. Now, here is a really good question to get into. Why do we need to paraphrase? So why is it important to paraphrase? Reiterating, Roshan, is paraphrasing the word paraphrase. So it's very good. Paraphrasing is absolutely key in IELTS. If you're trying to get a high band score 6, 6.5, 7 or higher, you really, really, really must know what paraphrasing is, and you have to be able to use it. I'm so amazed how many students attempt IELTS without having any idea of what paraphrasing is. So many of the questions in IELTS are made and answered using paraphrasing. That's the bottom line, girls and guys. So when you're looking at a question in the listening section on your sheet, in most cases, it's not going to be using the same vocabulary or grammar as what you actually hear, okay? When you're looking at the questions in the reading, again, in most cases, it's not going to use the same words as what you're actually reading in the passage for the answers. So what the IELTS people actually do is they paraphrase. They paraphrase because that's how you show that you understand the meaning of information, okay? So we use paraphrasing to make sure that everybody understands the same idea. It's an effective tool to emphasize key points. For example, I can say, the house is on fire. We've got to get out of here. We must leave. The house is burning. So I'm emphasizing, I'm making it very clear for everyone that I'm not just joking. The house indeed has erupted into flames and we must flee right away to avoid further injury. Many different ways to say the same idea, that the house is burning, and we're expressing it 3 different ways so that it emphasizes, strengthens the communication, the information, and makes it very, very powerful. Where do you think paraphrasing is especially useful to increase your band score? That's right, Ahmed, so that everyone understands clearly the information. So where do you think paraphrasing is especially powerful for your band score to increase in IELTS? It's useful in all sections, but especially powerful in a couple of sections. Writing is okay, Shakya, for sure. Speaking. Okay, what I'm looking for is the answer is speaking. Absolutely. That's right, Marina. Good to see you in class. Yeah, when you're speaking, paraphrasing is an especially powerful tool to make it clear for the examiner that you're understanding the information and that you're able to emphasize your answers, okay? And then what else it does is it allows us to check our understanding. So we can see how well we understand information by using paraphrasing, and specifically in the speaking section of IELTS, we can do that with some phrases. So we can say things like, just to make sure I understand you clearly, you said, and then paraphrase. So repeat this after me, girls and guys, because this is a very good little tip for the IELTS speaking section to make sure that you're understanding the question clearly so that you give a good answer. So you can start your answer by, just to make sure I understand you clearly, you said that people in the future will be using mobile phones not just to communicate, but also to drive their vehicles. So something like that. Okay, I'm just making that part up. There's other ways to say this or to request this. To be on the same page, you are telling me that. According to what you said, and then paraphrase. I'm sorry. So what you are asking is, and this is another way you can reverb the question in the speaking section. So let me show you that with a couple of actual answers or questions from a speaking point here, okay? So let's see. Do I have it here? Yep. Okay. I'm just going to play this sample audio for you here, and then you'll hear it. Okay? All right. Just give me one moment here. Okay, so the course is full of audio.
To be sure, you are asking me the reasons for playing sports?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, again, a little bit experimental. I think that was a little bit too quiet for all of you to hear. But regardless, again, you need to practice and apply these in your speaking section, okay? So one more time, repeat after me. Just to make sure I understand you clearly, you said that there are disadvantages to riding a bicycle to work. To be on the same page, you're telling me that there are some disadvantages to cycling to work. According to what you said, there are some negatives to taking a bike to work. I'm sorry, so what you're asking me is the positives and negatives of riding a bicycle to work. Okay, so again, practice these expressions to check your understanding for difficult questions in the speaking section. Okay, we'll practice those later on. All right, now here comes a very, very important part of paraphrasing. Some of you who watch these classes regularly and have our course know this. Make sure to review this. This is absolutely key. This is a diamond, a big gold nugget for all of you studying IELTS, okay? So paraphrasing is done in several ways. The most simple way is what's called synonyms. It's using the similar word, and here's the example, okay? So big and large. So this is the technique. It's a synonym. The example is big and large. All right? What's another way to paraphrase? Does anybody know? And IELTS uses all of these different techniques of paraphrasing, so you will find all of them. If you look carefully at the listening and reading sections, you will notice synonyms and you will notice some other techniques being applied. That's right, Shakia. Change in grammar is one of them. Any others? There are definitely a few different ways to paraphrase. Okay. Yes, Harky, there is live speaking practice on our websites. Changing the tense, Sakya, changes the information. So you got to be careful with that one in most cases. All right, let's have a look. Some pretty good answers there. Another way that paraphrasing is done is with antonym negative, right? Remember that -1 times -1 in many cases will equal +1, right? So if you say stay, you can also say don't go. Don't go is two negatives, right? Go is the opposite of stay, and if I add another negative, do not, then it becomes stay. So do not go is the same as stay. So pay attention to that one, okay? Again, IELTS uses this kind of paraphrasing as well. Can anybody give me another example of antonym negative paraphrasing? So can very empty is desolate. Yes, that's collocation, Roman and Nargiza. We'll get into that part a little bit. Can anybody give me an example of antonym negative paraphrasing just to see if you're on the same page as me? Yeah, late, not early. Okay, stop, don't go, kind of the same. Fast, not too slow. Yeah, those are okay. Michael John, don't leave. I think we're on the same one here. Absolutely, that's okay. Swati, I'm going to allow for your email to come up here. Just be careful of the information you share, okay, Swati? All right, that's right, Jeffrey. That's a good one. It's not expensive is often used to indicate that it's relatively cheap or affordable, okay? Love, not hate. There you go, Marina. Very good. A good one, okay? So practice these. So antonym negative. All right. The other one, and some of you mentioned it as collocations, are basically a large group called expressions. Expressions include phrasal verbs, idioms, collocations, okay? And I've used this one a couple of times today already. I said to be on the same page. To be on the same page, of course, if you're thinking about reading a book, if you're reading a book, I'm reading the same book, and we're on the same page, it means that we're reading the same information, so we should be understanding the same idea. So in English, we use the idiom to be on the same page to mean to understand the same idea. Again, in the speaking section, you can use this to check your understanding. So if the examiner asks you a difficult question like, how do you feel technology will change in the future to help people live longer lives? Then you can say something like, to be on the same page, you're asking me about novel technology that increases longevity. And then the examiner will say, yes, that's absolutely right. And then you can say, well, I'm certain that in the field of medicine, there will be advancements to increase human lifespans. Okay, so idioms, expressions, lots of different ones there. And then the fourth one, and this was mentioned by one of our members, Jeffrey, Michael John, and a couple of the other members watching. I'm going to be rephrasing sponsorship as membership because YouTube changed that. So grammar is another one, okay? So grammar, here's a good example. I have visited France, okay? What kind of grammar is that? I have visited France. Anybody? What kind of grammar is I have visited France? It's not past tense, Juna. It's a little bit different. No, it's not past, VJ. That's right, Maxime. It's present perfect, right? It's present perfect. All summer has the first right answer. It's present perfect. Have and visited together is present perfect, okay? To get high scores on IELTS 6 and higher, you have to know all your perfect tenses, okay? You have to know when to use them, how to use them. We'll get into those lessons. Of course, on our websites, we also have these grammar notes to help you review and learn present tense. Now, when we use present tense in English, we use it for 5 different reasons. That will be explained in another lesson. One of them is to emphasize our experience. So when you tell someone in English, I have visited France, you're basically saying to them, I went to France in the past, and this experience continues to affect my life today. So the difference between saying I visited France and I have visited France is when you say I have visited France in present perfect, it means that you went to France and things happened in France that made this into an experience. It wasn't just an insignificant event, okay? So paraphrasing can be done by grammar as well. All right, so remember, this equals that. Now, the 5th kind of paraphrasing is descriptive. It's a round, red, sweet fruit given to teachers. What is it? It's an apple. Okay? So again, you can describe an object or an event or an idea, and then that will also paraphrase the exact noun of what that is. All right? Now, IELTS does something interesting with paraphrasing. One of the ways that IELTS makes subsequent questions more and more difficult is by using more and more complex paraphrasing. So to keep this simple, just remember that the further you're along in the reading sections or the reading passages, or the further you are in the listening section, the more difficult the questions. And one reason they're more difficult is because the paraphrasing becomes more difficult. So for example, in listening section 1, you might see some very simple synonym paraphrasing like big and large. But by the time you get to listening section 4, you will often notice that the question is combining synonyms with some grammar and even maybe some description for what you're actually listening to. So does that make sense to everybody? Again, IELTS is a graded exam. So the more difficult or the further along you are, the more paraphrasing is happening, okay? So the more you have to recognize that paraphrasing. Jeffrey, thank you very much for that great example and a kind compliment. I appreciate it, okay? All right, so let's keep going here a little bit. Effective paraphrasing, okay? So you really need to learn to paraphrase not just quickly, but also effectively. All right? So that means that when you're studying at home and you're rewriting the questions in your own words, or you're rewriting reading paragraphs in your own words, your goal is to replace at least 70% of the original text or audio, okay? And thank you, Marina and Swati all summer, Juna and Jobert, for confirming that it's clear what I'm talking about. Okay? So again, effective paraphrasing, your goal is 70% replacement. It's okay if in the start you're only doing 30-40%, but as you get better and better, you want to look for 70% minimum. You're increasing your vocabulary, of course, when you're doing this. And in the beginning, you might need to use a dictionary and a thesaurus. Does everybody know what a thesaurus is? So when you're learning paraphrasing in the beginning and you're learning different ways to say the same ideas, then you're using a dictionary and a thesaurus. Does everybody know what a thesaurus is? Thesaurus. It sounds like a dinosaur. It's not a dinosaur. I think somebody already said Jurassic World. It's not a dinosaur from Jurassic World. So no, it's a thesaurus. That's right, Jeffrey. It's used for synonyms, and Swati just wrote it into the chat so everybody can see it. Yeah, thesaurus will give you synonyms. It's in your Microsoft Word application as well. It's a synonym dictionary, and they will also give you the antonym as well. So a thesaurus is a very, very good tool to use when you're studying for IELTS or when you're studying another language, especially once you reach the intermediate level, okay? And I think most of you, since you're studying for IELTS, are at least an intermediate level in English. So you should be using a thesaurus more than a dictionary, okay? When you see a new word, instead of looking at a dictionary to find the definition, look it up in a thesaurus and see if you understand the synonym. Okay? It's a much more efficient way of learning. I'll give you an example of that. So we just looked at a reading passage earlier. So we saw the word collide in there, okay? Now, collide might be a new word for many of you, and many of you might quickly think, okay, I'll look that up in the dictionary, and then if you look it up in the dictionary, you'll find the definition, which I'll put up there in a second. But if you look it up in a thesaurus, and again, when you're intermediate level, it's much more effective to do this, because when you look up collide in your dictionary, then it will just translate it to your own language. So either to Taiwanese or Arabic or French or Russian, and then you'll see that. And that's not good. You don't really want to be translating between languages. So use an English thesaurus instead, and then you'll find synonyms like crash, okay? And many of you know the word crash, okay? Or to smack together or hit together. Okay? So you'll find these synonyms like crash, hit together, and so on, and then you'll realize, oh, that's what collide means. So it's much, much more effective to learn a language in that language than to jump between two languages, okay? So stop using your dictionaries, start using your thesaurus, all right? Impact is another very good one, VJ, absolutely. Impact and collide are very good synonyms, absolutely. So use a thesaurus, not a dictionary, okay? Don't look for translations, look for synonyms, all right? Okay. So here's an example of paraphrasing. This is something that's really good to do at home. Again, this is using some of our practice materials or practice exams from our websites. This is passage number 3, paragraph number 4. So the original paragraph is in black here. And what I recommend doing at home is when you see an IELTS passage, okay, so you're looking at an IELTS passage, take your notebook, double space, write out the original paragraph. So take a simple short paragraph and in a double spaced way, write it into your notebook, okay? Leave a space between each line. Then, on your own, from your own mind, try to paraphrase. Again, remember, 70% replacement is your goal as much as possible. So what you should end up with is something like this. Defenders of the free market will claim that this recession is. So, paraphrasing defenders, supporters, free market stays the same of the free market. Economics will say that, okay? And then we'll continue. Simply a temporary bump in the road for what is arguably the greatest economic power in world history. Here we go. Recession is merely a blip on the radar for what might be called the most powerful economy the world has seen. Okay, and then we're continuing on here. They will say that the free market benefits all people in spite of its shortcomings. So lots of new vocabulary here. I'm sure this is a passage 3, so it's a higher level. Black is the original. The yellow is the paraphrase. Of course, at home, this is going to take some time. Be patient. And if you get stuck, use a thesaurus. Okay, so if you get stuck, use a thesaurus. Now, for those of you who are intimately following our course and our materials, this is what I challenge you to do over the next couple of days, is take paragraphs from reading passages, write them into your notebook, double-spaced, and then paraphrase them. Of course, check your paraphrasing. Make sure it's accurate. Make sure you're not making grammar mistakes or word choice mistakes, okay? So ask your teachers, send me an email, ask me, and check to make sure that you're using correct paraphrasing, all right? So that's one very useful exercise when you're preparing for IELTS. All right, here's a little bit more. So the original, in response, again, read with me. In response, it can be argued that the bumps in the road are symptomatic of a system in need of healing by means of regulation. Unfortunately, American culture is such that any regulation is seen as government interference in private affairs, and such intervention conflicts with American ideals. Now, some of you might be saying, whoa, that's really complex. What are you saying, Adrian? What does that mean? Well, that's the power of paraphrasing, is if we look at the paraphrasing here, you might be able to understand it much more clearly. Okay? So the yellow is the paraphrasing. Read it with me, and you might understand it more clearly. In regard, it is arguable that the blip on the radar is indicative of a structure that requires improvement in the way of control. Regrettably, American values are such that any regulation is seen as state interference in the affairs of the public, and such interference does not comply with American principles. Okay? So just simple examples here. American ideals is the same as saying American principles. Okay? A blip is a sudden spark, okay? Like a bloop, 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 bloop. So you know when a radar is showing where the boats are or where the airplanes are, and then you see a little flashing green dot or yellow dot, that's a blip, okay? All right, so that's one more example of paraphrasing there. Now, in our course, you will actually have a quiz. So if you're using our online course at ahelp.com or glshelp.com, then at this point, you will actually be redirected to a quiz. It's interactive, so if you're using it on your phone, you tap for the answers and so on. But in this slide presentation, that's not available to us. So we'll skip through that quiz. But when you're using the online course, make sure to do those quizzes. They will tell you the correct answers and the mistakes that you made, and they will give you a score average, okay? So pay attention for that. All right, the next and final major strategy that you must apply to your studies and your IELTS exam when you're sitting doing the official IELTS is visualization, okay? So I'm going to move through this one nice and fluid here so you can get this before the end of today. And then in the class on Sunday, we can get right into listening section and start getting into some details, okay? So again, we're using critical thinking to understand visualization a little bit more clearly, okay? So the first question you should ask, and you should always critically analyze information so that you know whether or not it's worth learning, okay? I never expect students of mine or clients of mine to take my word for what I'm saying. I always challenge and expect that my clients and my students question my strategies and the strategies of our course for learning, for teaching, and so on. So apply critical thinking in all aspects of life. Here we're applying it to visualization. So why do we need to visualize beyond the obvious? Well, first and foremost, our sense of sight is our most powerful among our 5 senses. So we have 5 senses, right? We have touch, we have taste when we're eating some food, we have hearing, right? Listening to music, so on, smell and vision. And arguably, if you ask a person which sense they would least like to lose, most people would say that their most precious sense is their vision, their ability to see, okay? So why do we need to visualize? The reason we need to visualize is to understand and learn information faster and better. If you're avoiding visualizing, if you're avoiding seeing information as you hear it or read it, you're learning slower than other students who use visualization. Some of the smartest people in the world are among the best visualizers in the world. The second reason is to remember information. When you can see information in your mind's eye inside of your head, it's much, much easier to remember information, okay? So even visualizing a phone number can often help to remember it, okay? We'll get into some specific questions, Swati, like multiple choice and so on, once we go over these really important key strategies. And then the third reason is to recall information. So we want to see information in IELTS so that we can not only remember it, but we can bring it back, okay? So when you're learning for IELTS, you need to do that. Now, here's a little image of the human brain. It's definitely a good idea to understand a little bit about your brain. It's a very important part of who you are. It is who you are. This back part of the brain here, so here's your eyeball. Okay, so this is where you'll find your eyes. All right. And this is where you'll find your ears, of course. Okay. And this back part that you see in green here, this part of the brain is called the occipital lobe, okay? Occipital meaning for vision. So this is a visual processing system. This system here is for your motor control, okay? Controlling your muscle movements and your feeling, your touch sensation. This is for your hearing. And there's a very little part inside here for smell. This part here that's for your vision is just as big as all of the other ones combined. Okay? So it's a massive processing system. It's a massive part of the computer that makes up your brain, and you definitely want to use that when you are studying for IELTS. Okay? You don't want to ignore that. You want to make use of this big processing system right here, okay? Don't ignore it. If you ignore it, you're only selling yourself short and you're making your studies, your learning more difficult. Okay, so now we get into this third very important question of how can you visualize? So how can I do this? And this is a very common question among students these days is, well, what should I do to visualize? What should I do to see information? So it's something that's vivid, clear, memorable, easy to use, okay? So what are ways to visualize? Now, there's a lot of different information in the world on the internet about learning powerful visualization, okay? Thank you for those compliments. That's my daughter in that picture that you saw there. So how can we visualize? I'm going to give you a very simple method of visualizing effectively when you're studying for IELTS, when you're learning about volcanoes, seeing those volcanoes. It's basically 3 steps. The first step is see the image clearly, okay? So don't rush your mind. People are always rushing these days. Everything is happening too quickly. We don't give time to our visualization and our imagination to see images clearly. But when you're studying information that you need to use in your life, like IELTS in this case, because you're trying to pass, then you really want to slow down and see images clearly in your mind. So if I say the word elephant, hopefully you don't just see this gray blob here, but you see something much more like this. Okay? This is not a real life picture of an elephant. There's no tusk. Okay? The color is very monotone. There's very little definition to the animal, as opposed to this picture here where we see all the wrinkles on the skin, on the trunk, those white, beautiful tusks of the elephant, the nice big flappy ears, the tail, even the green grass underneath. So try to see information in the clarity of reality, not in the sense of a cartoon. Okay? Now, you want to make the images unique. So if you're reading a passage about volcanoes, make it unique in some way, okay? So imagine that the volcano is in your backyard, all right? So make it unique in some way. An elephant, how can you make that unique? Well, one way is by shrinking it down, okay? So when we think of elephants, we tend to think of them, of course, as these massive animals. Now, if we shrink it down to the size of a mouse, so here you see a little tiny elephant, then immediately your brain will try to hold that information. So when you're learning for IELTS and you're reading about volcanoes or icebergs or about making plastic or a million other topics, the way that you can trick your mind into holding the information more is by doing something unique with it. So if you're reading about elephants, shrinking it down will help you to remember, okay? When you see the images clearly, they help you to understand what you're reading or learning about. When you're making it unique, it's helping you to remember that information. And you must practice this step by step. And the third step to good visualization, so the third way to do good visualization is be active in the image. The brain doesn't just like to, it loves to participate. So it loves to take part in what you are learning, all right? A lot of times students say, oh, the IELTS is so boring. I'm not interested in art. I'm not interested in elephants. Why am I learning this? Okay, well, you're learning that so that you can get into university, so that you can prove your English level, or you can emigrate to another country and live the life that you wish. So you have a goal in mind, and for that reason, you need to become interested in the information. So that information about elephants and about art should become the most interesting information for you at that time. Now, how can you do that? Trick your brain. Make it participate. So if you're learning about volcanoes, imagine that you're climbing on the side of a volcano that's just about to erupt, or you're climbing on the side of a volcano in Hawaii with some lava flow, okay? So be active in the image. What can I do? Well, I can take this little tiny mouse-sized elephant, and I can stick that elephant into my shirt pocket. So just imagine my head over here. And there's the elephant in my shirt pocket. Now, if I can visualize a real African elephant the size of a mouse sitting in my shirt pocket while I'm reading about elephants, certainly I'll be very interested and will want to learn all of the details about what they eat, where they live, where they like to sleep, because I want to take care of my cute little elephant friend sitting in my shirt pocket. So you can manipulate your thinking in your brain into holding information, and then when you become a part of that information, that will help you to use information in the future, okay? So if you have an elephant in your room hiding under your bed, Jobert, that's a great way to do it, all right? Manipulate your thinking to enjoy information and to become active in information, okay? I appreciate you agreeing with me, Jeffrey. So that is the what, why, how of visualization. Now, here's an example taking a passage from IELTS. Okay, again, this is coming from our materials, ahelpgltshelp.com. And for all of you watching, if you're enjoying this information, definitely join our full course in these websites and go through these step by step and practice them using the exams. We have 6 full exams so that you can master IELTS and really enjoy learning for IELTS and enjoy information as well. Let's take a look at this paragraph. So this paragraph is again continuing with some continental drift theory. Read with me. Initially, the supercontinent Pangaea divided into 2 parts named Laurasia and Gondwana. Laurasia consisted of what is today North America, Asia, and Europe, whilst Gondwana comprised modern-day South America, Africa, and Australia. These supercontinents eventually split apart further, resulting in today's continental configuration. It is interesting to note that today's continental alignment is just that. Millions of years in the future, the Earth's continents will appear very different. Given enough time, it is possible that the Earth's land masses will return to a Pangaea-like unified state. So this paragraph, it's talking about continental drift. It's talking about the supercontinent Pangaea, which separated into 2 other massive continents that later on became the continents that we know today. So when I'm reading this, I might say, oh, continental drift, I don't care about that. Who cares? That's not interesting for me. Well, it has to be, because your IELTS score depends on it. So what should you do? You should visualize, okay? So try to see the world like this, okay? Try to, just jump back there. So try to see the world. Now in your full course, this is a video, as you can see, and I don't know if I can play it here. I'll give it a try. I don't think it'll play out of my PowerPoint slide here, but anyway, this is a video here, and the video shows you this beautiful supercontinent Pangaea, and then it shows you how it splits apart, and it shows you how it will look in the future as well. And you shouldn't just be looking at this video and going, oh yeah, that's kind of neat. Oh, okay, so in the future, Asia will be joined to South America. No, you should be, again, actively participating, making it unique, imagining yourself as a giant sitting on top of these continents, moving around on this beautiful blue liquid called water, okay? So again, you need to visualize, okay? So notice the movement of continents, visualize where you are, where you're moving to, okay? See that convergent, divergent process. And then again, in our actual online course, you will have a quiz here. The quizzes don't function in my PowerPoint presentation, but they do, of course, function in your interactive course. So you have a quiz here that tests your ability to visualize and how well you're visualizing the information that you read and that you listen to in IELTS. So let's conclude what we just covered today and in Wednesday's class. So there are 3 key strategies that you must master in IELTS, okay? They are critical thinking, paraphrasing, and visualizing, all right? If you're not comfortable and confident with these 3 strategies, don't do anything. Just focus on these and learn them and practice them until you feel that you're confident and you know what's going on, okay? So when you reach that point where you can say, hey, okay, I get it. I know what I'm doing. I know what I need to do for critical thinking. I get what paraphrasing is, the different ways of doing it. And yes, now I'm picturing the information that I'm reading and listening, and it's not just going in one ear and coming out the other, because that just doesn't work. And then once you feel comfortable with these, then get into the course. The course will use these 3 strategies throughout in detail, it will help you to master these 3 strategies. Okay? So again, our online courses, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gltshelp.com for general IELTS, both of them introduce the key strategies, what I just showed you, the same, okay? The exams, of course, are a little bit different, the practice exams. On Sunday, we will start getting into specific sections of IELTS, of course, starting with the listening section. So we're going to look at how critical thinking, visualization, and listening, or sorry, paraphrasing, apply to the listening section. And then we'll look at specific examples and question strategies for multiple choice, filling in blanks, matching answers, filling out tables, flowcharts, and so on, all right? Thanks for the fist bump, Jeffrey. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Great to see you in class. Marina, hugs to everyone. Have a wonderful, beautiful day, everyone. Join us again on Sunday. We'll start digging deeper into IELTS, deeper into the listening section, giving you more specific strategies for question types. Make sure to practice these key strategies. They will lead you to success. Bye for now. Have a beautiful rest of your day.